All right, it looks like we are live. Guys, give me just a minute. As you know, we've got to get the Facebook groups in here on a wonderful Friday evening to check out everything that we've got here for the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome in. This is the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as per usual is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. And dude, last weekend, I have to give you a hell of a lot of kudos, dude. First off, you ran the show for the majority of the time. We bounced it back and forth in terms of responsibility of who was supposed to guide everything. But dude, congratulations on a great draft cycle. Like your work was absolutely phenomenal. Got to give you all of the props for everything that you did, helping everybody else throughout the weekend and just doing a great job, man. To everybody else here at Mile High Huddle that joined us as well, Nick Kendall, Dylan Von Arks, we had Chad and Zach. Who else did we have? We had Luke Polglaze as well. Congratulations to everybody here. How are you doing this weekend?
I'm doing good. I mean, it was a nice week. We had a fun weekend doing the shows. Being there. I believe we set a record on Saturday with the most consistent viewers, sitting about 750 at least throughout the day. It was a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun conversations with you, Carl, Dylan, Luke, Nick, and everybody else who was on the shows. Had fun, back and forth with some people in the chat as well, especially, that first night with the pick, which we have Todd Ostendorf in the chat saying he was right again about our first round pick. Todd, you were. Hopefully you're right on the outcome as well, like you were with the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully. Because that's what's best for the Broncos. And I mean, it was a fun weekend. It was a fun draft. And already getting started on stuff for next year. I have a 2025 early first round mock draft in waiting to get published already. So it's been fun. It's been nice, and it was a great time. And thanks to everyone who joined, thanks to everyone who tuned in. You guys helped make that weekend such a blast.
Yeah, again, guys, we had like 1,800 viewers on Thursday, about 1,500 on Friday, and then again, 750 to 800 concurrent viewers pretty much the entire duration of the show on Saturday, practically doubling our previous attendance record, which was just incredible. I mentioned it multiple times on the show, like how grateful we were for you guys to be there. And again, we're grateful for all of you, even here this evening on a Friday, to come and join in with us and have some fun and talk some Denver Broncos football. Speaking of let's give a quick shout out to everybody here in the chat. We got Michael Ronquillo jumping in. Happy 5-3 Randy Gratishar Day, Broncos country. Hashtag Go Broncos. He comes in with some stars here saying, good evening, Lance and Erick on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos. Again, we got Todd Ostendorf in the house. We've got DVA running things behind the scenes. Super chat from David. We'll grab that here in a second. I'm the man, David Youngkin, C. Chang, Paul Jackson, Jody Hashberger. It's great to see you guys here again Friday evening. It's always fun to hang out with everybody here in Broncos country and just have fun, disconnect from the real world for a little bit. But we got our guy David Cromwell jumping in here with the $5 super chat right before the show went live, saying Mike Kliss said it would be surprising if Jarrett Stidham doesn't begin OTAs as quarterback one. Is that an alarming sign for Bo Nix, or is this normal protocol? I'm going to take this one to start, and then I'll pass it to Erick really fast. I think this is pretty well normal for OTAs anyways. Let the guys with experience get out there and let them, the guys that understand the offense, get out there and just kind of go through the process, show the young guys a little bit. Pretty well standard protocol for the most part, in my opinion, unless it's like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud last year, the number 1, number 2 overall pick, where those guys were the lead guys, obviously coming into the whole situation. Right now, with the Broncos having Jarrett Stidham in tow, Zach Wilson as well as they traded for him right before the class. Bo Nix, they gave him all that pre-draft paperwork and did the workout with him, which is a really cool story. But this seems pretty normal to me. Erick, what do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty much normal unless you're one of the first 2 quarterbacks taken in the top 5. It's pretty much normal. The incumbent starter, basically, they get a chance to show what they can do, and especially when they were with the team last year, and especially when they themselves have earned so much praise from Sean Payton. Do I think it lasts very long? No. I think by training camp, Bo Nix is taking the first string reps, and he's got a pretty concrete hand on the job. They can talk all they want about how there's going to be a competition and everything, but if Bo Nix isn't the starter, it's not a good look to start the season. You got to get him out there with his age and his experience. There's no reason to sit there and be sitting him. Get him out there, get him going from the start, and whether that quarterback too is Jarrett Stidham or Zach Wilson, that's where the competition is. But Stidham, as with the question, he'll get the first shot. It's not an alarming sign. It's just normal protocol, pretty much.
Yeah, and like you said, with Bo Nix being 24 years old, he had 61 total starts in his 7 or 8 or 9 year career in college. I know it's 5, but still, he has plenty of experience. And then again, going back to that discussion about the situation with the Broncos going up to Eugene to go work him out, they gave him essentially the rookie minicamp install and said, go out there and learn this. You have like 12 hours to figure it out. We're going to go through a whiteboard session and then put you on the field and see how you do. And from all accounts, he aced it. I mean, we talked about that. I believe it was Thursday with the reporting that we had gotten. And then Albert Breer came back out on Monday morning with an article on sportsillustrated.com talking the exact same thing. So everything that we know of Bo Nix right now is his processing ability, his ability to process this information, translate it to the football field, and just start off on a great foot with that experience is something that tells me that he's going to be the starter day one. And if he's not, then again, the process is terrible here. You go out and spend a 12th overall pick on a guy like that, and you're going to start Zach Wilson or Jarrett Stidham ahead of him to start the season. It's a bad look, and Sean Payton should be questioned thoroughly for that. With that said, though, thank you, David, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on Friday for Dove Valley Deep Divers. We have a great show for you guys today because it says we're going to kind of go through the NFL schedule drop. That's not really what we wanted to try to do. We were going to run through the draft classes of every team that the Broncos are playing on their schedule this year, starting obviously with the Broncos class. We're going to work through the AFC West because you got those 6 games as well. Work through the AFC North because the Broncos play Cleveland, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati this year as well. They also have the NFC South, and then I believe it's the Colts, the Jets, and the Seattle Seahawks to round out their schedule. We may not be able to get through all of them, but we're going to break down their draft classes, give our favorite picks, the worst matchup nightmare, stuff like that, how this season is going to break down and work out for the Denver Broncos. Let's start off with the Broncos picks. Obviously, we talked about Bo Nix at number 12 overall, but they went and they got Jonah Ellis with their 3rd round pick at number 76. They traded up to get the number 102 selection to draft Troy Franklin. This is Bo Nix's right-hand man, the wide receiver out of Oregon. In the 5th round, they draft Chris Abrams-Drain, a cornerback from Missouri. Right after that, they got Audric Estime, the running back out of Notre Dame. In the 7th round, one of the picks that they got with the trade up to go get Troy Franklin, they draft Devon Vele, and then Nick Gargiulo rounds out the class of center out of South Carolina. Haven't got a chance to get eyes on him, but sounds like a very intriguing and athletic player with high-end upside at the center position. Now, Eric, we gave a lot of our draft thoughts on draft night, draft weekend, but I want your overall, like the overarching grade for this class. How did you like or dislike what the Broncos did this last weekend?
I think Saturday when we were closing out, I gave them an A or an A minus. The more time I've had to sit on it and all that, I think I'd probably go with a B plus, A minus. So not much of a difference, but a slight drop off. I have some concerns about it. I like quite a few of the picks, Troy Franklin, even though I have my concerns about him with, the physicality, the consistency with his hands, the route running. He brings additional explosive playmaking. Chris Abrams-Drain, I think, at that point, that's a pretty solid pickup for additional competition. And then Audric Estime, he's going to add a powerful force at the running back position. But the rest of the picks, I was pretty down on. I'm not a big Jonah Ellis fan. Devon Vele, here in about a couple of years, he's probably going to be retiring because he's so old. His age makes Bo Nix look young.
Yes.
And then the center is, I had a chance to watch him and watch a little bit more of him. I only managed to watch 3 games prior to the draft. End up with his grade. And he's a fine shot there for it. So B plus, A minus is where I would still go. A couple other ways I would have gone in the actual draft, but it's not, I don't think it's a terrible draft. I don't think it's an outstanding draft like, some other people do, but it's a pretty good one.
I'm with you on that. And I actually wrote up the draft grade for milehighhuddle.com. You guys can go and find out my just general Cliff Notes thoughts on that over there if you get the opportunity to. I'd really appreciate that. But again, B plus is pretty much what I gave this class. Comfortable with the Bo Nix selection as we kind of get further and further away from it in the moment. Understanding the entire situation with Michael Penix Jr. being taken at number 8 overall by the Atlanta Falcons, really changing up the dynamic of the draft class, quite honestly, because nobody expected that. That was one big shocking pick this weekend was Penix Jr. to the Falcons at 8, because everyone thought it was going to be Dallas Turner. I mean, there was thoughts about Johnny Newton out of Illinois going there, Terrion Arnold, the cornerback from Alabama, going there, and they just bluffed everybody to take this quarterback, which was, again, a stunner. When that happened, the Broncos knew that they had to take Nix. There was no trade down scenario in which they could go and get him. They had to get their guy. And then hearing the workout information that we got after the fact really kind of makes me a little bit more comfortable with it, although I would have liked that trade down. Ellis, to me, was a little bit of a reach, especially considering Adisa Isaac from Penn State was still on the board. But, I mean, I get it. You're talking about kind of versatile player, good spin move, high volume pass rusher, a high pressure rate. Didn't quite get the sack numbers, but he was always constantly being a disruptor in the backfield. I think my favorite pick, though, out of this entire class wasn't a draft pick. It was a trade. The Broncos trading for Jonathan Franklin Myers, that 2026 sixth-round pick to go get a force along the interior, a guy that can play inside and outside to help out this defensive line. That was probably the best move. But in terms of a player that I like the most, I think Chris Abrams-Drain is the one that really shined to me in terms of the value of what he is. The versatility at the cornerback position, being able to play off the ball, play inside and outside, the scheme versatility that he has. That was probably my most favorite pick of the entire class for this year in terms of what they did with their draft picks. Todd jumps in here, says, what just happened? Did Lance and I agree on players? I wanted Adisa Isaac too. Yeah. Speed rusher needs a little bit more refinement in his run technique, but at least there's upside there. I think Ellis was a little redundant with Nick Benito, and Isaac probably would have been as well, but at least he offers higher upside as a run defender. Eric, what do you think on Adisa Isaac over Jonah Ellis for the Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, I was a little bit higher on Isaac than Jonah Ellis, but a lot of it is, the health of them. Mm-hmm. And Jonah Ellis, he's missed some time with injuries, was dealing with an injury throughout the draft process. And the Broncos have enough injury concerns in the edge room. But keeping it on the field, I think Isaac just brought a lot more to work with, and, brings more as a run defender than Jonah Ellis does. Not the same type of run defense that we have from the edge room where you're going to be betting on shooting gaps to make a play rather than, actually, holding up the edge and working through your blocks. And you need those guys. Like, you need the guys who can shoot. You can shoot those gaps, but you need those guys who can set the edge, and that's just not Jonah Ellis. So yeah, I mean, even outside of Adisa Isaac, there were still a couple other edges that I would have been fine with over Jonah Ellis, just partially because I was really low on Jonah Ellis and still am. That's probably one of my least favorite. That probably is my least favorite pick from the Broncos draft.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm jumping over to your. Actually, no, it's not. Your least valued pick for the Broncos was Devon Vele, the wide receiver out of Utah. 6'5", ridiculously long arms. Problem is he's 27 years old after going on an LDS mission. And you never want a 27-year-old, going to be 28 years old in December player on your roster to the end of the draft. But if you're talking physicality, red zone threat, that makes a lot of sense. The best value for your best value player for the Broncos on your big board here was Troy Franklin with a net value -78. So I want you to kind of run through the process that you do with this. It's not going to make a whole lot of sense, but run through the process with your draft valuations. How do you go about this in creating the best value overall on your board as compared to where they were selected in the NFL draft?
It's really simple because by the time I get around to doing this, I'm really exhausted and just don't want to put too much time and effort into it. Just because it's just a small thing that I do, and it's more so to compare how my board stacks up against the consensus board. With that said, it's pretty simple. I stack my players from 1 through this year 382. Anybody who wasn't on my board is valued at 383. Where do they go in the draft? I have a player that's, say, 50th overall, and he goes 55th. Well, that's a positive 5 value because he fell 5 spots compared to where I had him. And so it's a positive value. Now, if he was graded 55 and went 45, that's a negative 5 because he was a reach for 5 spots. Really simple. Just a straight, all right, here's where they graded in a stacked board. Here's where they went. What's the difference between where they sat and where they went? So that's really just what it is.
It's still a difficult process because you have to go through every single one of those picks and do every single one against your big board value. So kudos to you again, showing the work that you do to just evaluate the NFL draft as a whole. Let's move forward though, because we've got, again, this is going to be a loaded show. We're probably going to move pretty quickly, guys. If you have any questions, make sure you get them in super chats or stars. We'll get any questions that we possibly can answered, but we're going to start this off by going through the AFC West. We're going to start off with the Kansas City Chiefs. You had the best value pick, Jaden Hicks, the safety out of Washington State, least value, CJ Hansen. But the guy that I had the most fun watching was a guy named Jared Wiley, a tight end out of TCU. With Travis Kelce at the tail end of his career, dude, finding a value in a player like that as a receiving threat with explosive upside, that's huge for the Chiefs. He's not going to have to start right now, which is going to help his development curve, especially as a blocker. But, dude, how dangerous is this guy as a vertical threat at the next level?
Yeah, I mean, his quickness and his speed, like, it replaces something that offense was missing so much and just adds just a it re-adds really another dangerous element. Now, he's not Tyreek Hill because, Tyreek Hill was maybe not the most physical guy, but he was willing to get down and dirty when need be. And Xavier Worthy, not so much. But still, anytime you can add speed like that can stretch the field, when you have a player like Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, yeah, it's a threat. And then the Broncos in the secondary, they just don't have anybody that can keep up with Xavier Worthy. So they're really going to have to, give him those cushions from at corner. They're going to have to really have those safeties play deep. And basically, Xavier Worthy, even if he I don't want to say if he doesn't live up to his draft status, but with the speed he brings, you basically have to change how you play this Kansas City Chiefs offense compared to most other offenses because it is such a threat. He's basically a matchup dictator because just that pure speed, raw speed that he has.
Quality enough of a route runner. I think that some speed variation would do him a little bit better in terms of coming in and into and out of his breaks, but the ability that he has to take the top off the defense, and then you combine it with another guy that runs 4.27 in Hollywood Brown, and then a guy that's clocked in at 119 miles an hour in Rashee Rice. I mean, they've got a lot of speed on that Kansas City Chiefs receiving core, but Wiley, dude, his ability to run horizontally, take the football and then stretch it vertically, or even stretch the seam going at the tight end position. That's going to be huge, like a huge value for that Chiefs offense, especially after Kelce leaves. Like you essentially don't miss a beat in terms of athleticism coming out of the tight end position. Well, Kelce may not be the best blocker, neither is Wiley, but he can still line up in line if you need him to and still function out of that, which is kind of what the Chiefs have already. It's like a 1-for-1 replacement essentially.
Well, I mean, with Kelce, the big thing with him is that he very clearly lost a step this last year.
Yeah.
Even before he got hurt, you can see some signs of decline over the last 2 years, really. Then the injuries, it happens. He's 34, 35 years old. Your body starts to drop off a little bit. And now they have an uber athletic tight end that can stretch the field down the seam, can just create a lot of issues with coverage, to sit there and learn behind him. And the other tight end that they have, who's a decent backup tight end, decent rotational guy. So it adds with Xavier Worthy, adding that true pure speed down the field. They have these tight ends now that can work underneath and take, full advantage of that, of the spacing that is given to them. And I bet we're going to see Andy Reid have a lot of fun with plays this next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to Andy Reid, like you said, the play design aspect of Andy Reid with Worthy, one of the big problems that you have with him on tape is the fact that he doesn't do well because he's limited in his stature. He's a smaller player, electric speed, but if you don't have the physicality to get off of press coverage, you're going to have issues at the NFL level. Well, with Worthy going to a system with Andy Reid, where they're going to put him in motion a lot, they're going to have him working behind the line of scrimmage, using him in gadget plays, and then open up that speed with a head start. Essentially, he's never going to have to worry about press coverage. You want to talk about a dream fit? This is a perfect fit, and I think we all need to kind of come together and flash a gigantic middle finger to the Buffalo Bills for trading up or for trading down with the Chiefs so that they could go and get a player like Xavier Worthy, who is essentially a Tyreek Hill replacement. Not, I won't say clone because they're not quite the same player, but electric speed. There you go, and that's exactly what it is. We got GLP jumping in here with the $5 super chat. Good evening, Lance and Eric. Can't wait to see the rookies in practice. Always surprises. Go Broncos. Eric, when does rookie minicamp open up? Do you know? I know it's here in the next couple of days.
The 11th or the 12th, I think.
Okay,
I think it's sometime late next week.
Okay, because you're seeing some videos. I think it was the Eagles had their rookies in minicamp already. They were talking about Johnny Wilson a little bit. I know the Seahawks are in camp as well. They threw out some videos of Byron Murphy working out. So Broncos minicamp, the rookie minicamp coming right around the corner. The 10th. Thank you, Eric. So right around the corner, we're that's actually a week from today, to tell you the truth. So I'm excited about that. Maybe we'll have some news to break down coming out of that. That would always be fun to talk about. Phil McLaughlin over on Facebook jumping in saying, good evening, Lance and Eric and Deacon Scott, if he is here. We do have Scott tonight. Thank you, Scott, for joining us. Eric and I understand your plus minus on players, but what is your formula for placing a draft pick at 50 or 10, etc.? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life. I think he's getting to your grading scale here. How do you go about the grading scale if you want to give a Cliff Notes detail or explanation of that?
Yeah, I mean, so where they get placed, whether 50 or 10th, that just depends on what their grade was. So like my number one overall player is going to be number one overall. So when you get into that, when I'm calculating the formula, it's just wherever their grade was. Some guys, it is a bit of like, when I have players of the same grade, it's more of a, all right, I prefer this guy a little bit better, even though he has the same grade. So instead of pick 50, he'll go 49, and the other guy who he shares a grade with will be pick 50. I don't have a set thing for, tiebreakers there when they have the same grade outside of, my personal preference for it. But yeah, for my grading scale, I have 15 different categories that I grade on. It's a grade scale of typically 1 to 10. Some of them are only 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, and 0 to 10 depends on what it is. And just everything goes into it. As much information, like medicals is one of them, as much information as I can get. How many games they've missed, how many, what were the injuries, how severe were those injuries? All those things get factored into it. There's different technical aspects of it, depending on their position. There's the football IQ, any character maturity red flags. It's just a lot of stuff that goes into the grade, and that grade just determines on where they sit on the big board, which again just gets stacked 1 through however many players I end up having a set grade on, for me to calculate my values.
I asked Eric almost exactly this exact same question before we went live. Like, how do you formulate like the decimal point values and stuff like that? He gave me kind of a similar answer. Myself, knowing the grading scale that I use is not a decimal point system. It's just a 0 out of 100. But I have every position group broken down by the top, I think it's 10 different positional skill set values that you like hand placement, footwork, overall athleticism is the last thing that I rank, but lateral agility, tackling ability for like linebackers and stuff like that, length. There's a lot of different stuff that goes into it. Eric has a personal preference thing. I use it by positional value. So if I have players with the same grade, I typically go positional value rather than my personal preference. But you're splitting hairs at that particular point, and that's a personal preference, is what it is.
You don't think positional value is going to play into who I like better?
Oh, I know exactly what it is. I know what it is.
It does. Like, so if it's a center and a quarterback, I'll probably, unless like the quarterback absolutely drives me nuts, odds are the quarterback will be higher because positional value does get factored in.
Yeah.
It's also something that does get factored into the overall grade too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. This is a great question, Phil. And hopefully one of these days we can run through and kind of show grading scales. If we get a slow show on a Friday night or something like that, somewhere over the summertime, I would love to go through and pick your brain a little bit on the scouting process. But typically those shows don't do a lot of volume. So we'll see. We'll get there. Back to our draft evaluations here. We have the Chargers next up. You have Brendan Rice, the wide receiver out of USC, as your best value for the Chargers. I believe a 6th round pick is where they got him. The least value Tarheeb, still this cornerback, safety, defensive back kind of player out of Maryland. But I got to go to the wide receiver room here, because after moving on from Mike Williams in free agency and trading Keenan Allen to the Bears, the Chargers really needed to reconstruct their receiving room. They still had Quentin Johnson, their 1st round pick from last year, but he really didn't show much at all. And in fact, the inconsistencies that he showed at TCU were still there. However, they added Ladd McConkey, they added Brendan Rice, they added Cornelius Johnson. It's a great start to rebuild that room, and they keep kind of similar skill sets to what Mike Williams and Keenan Allen were. They also added DJ Chark after the fact, that after the draft was over. What kind of upside did this receiving core bring going towards the future? Like, there's a lot of promising players here.
Yeah, they have some promising guys. They also have Joshua Palmer, who I think is a underrated receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not a number one guy, but he can definitely contribute in multiple ways to that, especially with Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey. He's in exactly that type of piece that not only does Harbaugh want in his offense, but he's that type of piece that the Chargers have needed for Justin Herbert that they haven't had for, I think, at all throughout his career. And then Brendan Rice, I mean, he does right now. Does one thing extremely well, so you got to still develop him. But for a position that was lacking a lot of depth, he can sit there and help add that element to it. DJ Chark as well, and then Johnston, their 1st round pick from last year. Obviously, they're hoping that he takes a huge step forward, but it is kind of becoming more concerning as wide receivers entering the NFL. More and more of them are having more of an immediate impact year one, instead of needing to take a year or two before they really step forward. So the question is will Johnston, follow the old trend that kind of started dying out about 5 to 10 years ago, to where they needed a little bit more time before they made that immediate impact, to where they're now starting to make that more immediate impact. And this is something that Nick and I talked about in relation to Marvin Mims specifically, but we can talk that about another time. So they did a decent job of it. They have a couple decent veterans within the roster, but it is a very young room. I mean, DJ Chark and Joshua Palmer, I believe, are their 2 oldest guys on there, and I believe both of them are. I believe one is 27 and the other one is like 28 years old. Joshua Palmer is 24 years old and DJ Chark is 27. So DJ Chark is the oldest one in that room at 27 years old. So definitely still a very young room.
So what was your favorite pick for the Chargers this year? I know that you really valued Ladd McConkey, and you were talking about him being wide receiver number 5 for you this year. Is that your favorite pick, or did you go in a different direction here?
My favorite pick for them is actually Junior Colson, the linebacker, that was there
that's a good one
with them. They've had a lot of issues with it after, Kenneth Murray flamed out there. They've had some issues at the linebacker position, and in the defense that they're going to be running, that linebacker position is so vital. So having Junior Colson coming in and working with Jesse Minter, who is going to be running a scheme that basically, was there at Michigan, he has that easy track to picking it up quickly and really developing as a voice and the communicator within within the defense for that. So I really like the Junior Colson pick.
And he had a very interesting story. I believe it was Carl was reading from Dane Brugler's The Beast, talking about how he was adopted, didn't really start to play football until late, but then he showed up being an amazing player. He's very athletic. He's very fluid. He's a downhill player. He can play well in coverage. Like, this was a really good get. And going back to Jim Harbaugh, he had a handful of guys, and I believe that this was one of his most favorite players from that Michigan roster, man. Like, a very fun story, and just overall a really good draft pick for the Chargers, man.
And one thing too is I completely forgot that Jesse Minter was the defensive coordinator for Michigan last year and followed Harbaugh. So yeah, it is obviously going to be the same scheme. Completely spaced that, he just brought the defensive coordinator with him.
Yeah. You know what? I actually didn't even know that. And that's that again, good get. I really like what the Chargers have done this offseason. They go out and they get Joe Alt, the left tackle from Notre Dame. Sounds like he's going to start on the right side, so they don't have to move Rashawn Slater. They just keep Slater there, plug in Alt on the right side. They rebuild the running back room. They go out and get a couple of really good running backs from the Baltimore Ravens and Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. So they've kind of rebuilt that, moving away from Austin Eckler. Defensively, they're a little bit lacking still. I'd have to look at their draft class again. I can pull it up right now. But let's see here. They went and got Justin Aboybe from Alabama, defensive tackle, good run stuffer there. Tarheeb still. Cam Hart is a good pick for them out of Notre Dame. So yeah, I mean, I like what they've done. It's going to be interesting to see how the smash mouth version of the Michigan Wolverines essentially step into the Los Angeles Chargers and kind of redefine the dynamic of that offense, and especially on the defensive line of that football team. Going to be really fun to check that out. Let's go to our other division rivals, the next door neighbors, the Las Vegas Raiders. To hell with the Raiders. We all hate them. It sucks that we have to talk about them, but we have to. Best value for you, MJ Devonshire, a cornerback from Pittsburgh, cornerback safety, more defensive back out of Pittsburgh. Least value, Delmar Glaze, the offensive tackle out of Maryland. But the one guy I really want to talk about, everybody talks about Brock Bowers. Like, obviously, the tight end position is huge. He's going to be a big mismatch for this Broncos defense, especially with Cody Barton and Alex Singleton. But they went and added a high value player in terms of a receiver out of the backfield in the 6th round with Dylan Labe, the running back out of New Hampshire. Electric route runner, very quick, twitchy, not necessarily the best size. But again, with Barton and Alex Singleton not being the best in coverage, how significant are these two additions to the Raiders offense working over the middle of the field against this Broncos defense?
Well, one, I wouldn't be so sure Cody Barton is a starter at linebacker.
That's fair.
So,
is it going to be Sanders, or what's the situation there?
I'm not sure, but it's definitely a competition. Griffith is involved in it. Justice Renaud's going to be part of it. They wanted him back to try to see if he can't win a role on there. So, but it doesn't matter. Both Brock Bowers and Dylan Labe are two guys that can really attack where the Broncos are weak at when it comes to their coverage ability, especially in the middle of the field. With the guys that the Raiders have at running back, I question how much Dylan Labe can, get out there on the field early. They have Zamir White, who they really like a lot. They brought in Alexander Madison and Amir Abdullah, who is kind of that more receiving type back for them. So they have some options there. They also have a familiar face for the Broncos and Tyreek McAllister. But so they had plenty of options. And Dylan Labe was one of my favorite players in this draft. Absolutely loved him. Hate that he went to the Raiders. So if they find a way, if he can work his way onto the field, then yeah, he can really hurt a lot of defenses just with the receiving ability. Like, he's not overly fast, but he's quick. He runs good routes. He has a lot of hands, and he's a good enough runner to still be a threat with the, being handed the ball off. And then Brock Bowers, if he can stay healthy, he can be such a threat to stretch the seam, such a threat to, dictate coverages. You can line him up inside and in line. You can line him up in the slot. You can even line him up in the boundary. You can just use him to try and create favorable matchups for it, which is something that you really have to do to get the most out of Gardner Minshew. So I really like what they did with the weapon aspect of it. I absolutely like their pick of Jackson Powers Johnson. Outside of those 3 picks, though, I think they kind of fell flat. I remember talking with Nick back in like February or March about Delmar Glaze, and I basically made the comment that Delmar Glaze is terrible. I won't use the exact wording that I used because I can't, but saying he is terrible was putting it nice. I was not a fan of Delmar Glaze. To Cameron Richardson, he's fine, but he's more of a complementary piece in the secondary, a guy that you can have as like that 3rd guy or 4th guy as part of your, the slight small rotation that you have. Tommy Eichenberg, he's fine. I mean, he can be a communicator. I think you get kind of Josie Jewell-ish type upside out of him. Trey Taylor, I don't mind him. I was very low on him though, just because he's, I didn't see, great versatility with him. And then MJ Devonshire, he's a defensive back that I really liked a lot. But I mean, at that point, you're looking at 6th, 7th round flyers with Taylor and Devonshire that you're just hoping to try to get something out of.
Trey Taylor, for as much like the hype that was surrounding him because he's an Air Force Falcon, the local kid, everybody's going to pound up the local kid. I didn't like his fluidity in coverage. He's more of a downhill player, in my opinion. And he's great coming downhill. Jim Thorpe Award winner, like one of the better defensive backs in college football last season. But put him on an island and play him as a single high safety. He doesn't have the range, doesn't have the fluidity to do that. He's, again, downhill player. You want him in the nickel. You want him kind of playing that dime backer role. I think Eichenberg was one of my favorite picks for them, though, because they needed a stabilizing force along the interior of that defense. Just, again, that communicator. So I like that a lot. My favorite pick for them was Jackson Powers Johnson, though. He's going to come in, probably start for them at right guard from the sound of it. And built like a brick, what house, full of power. He's going to fit exactly what they want to do with that offense down there. So the Raiders, they were just kind of okay, I guess. I don't know. Getting Bowers at 13 was huge for them because they just took the best player on the board, and he's going to help a lot with them. They also have Michael Mayer, their second round pick from was he a second round pick or a third round pick? One of the two, an early pick for them, a day 2 selection at the tight end position. So you get versatility with those guys. Mayer can line up on the line of scrimmage as that wide tight end, and Bowers, you can flex him out in the slot if you wanted to. So you got some versatility with those guys. That's probably their best pick. My favorite was still, though, is Jackson Powers Johnson. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. We're outside of actually, you know what? Let's grab this from Sean Ward saying, hello, Broncos country from San Antonio, Texas area. Wish they would stop with the negative about Bo Nix. Guy is smart with the ball and his stats show it. Hashtag Bo for sure. Hashtag go Broncos. Hashtag Texas love. Sean, want to grab this comment because it's the first time I'm seeing your name in this chat. Thank you very much for joining us. We have definitely some interesting thoughts on Bo Nix, but let's address your comment here. Guy is smart with the ball and his stats show it. Eric, what do you have to say about that? Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he is smart and he shows it with the ball and with his stats, and he's smart with the ball in his hands. He makes good reads. I'm intrigued by the analytics that Denver did to, take away 70% of his throws basically, and how things went. I mean, that's always something that's interesting. That's stuff that obviously we don't have access to. Because it really took away the impact the offense had on, the style of offense he played in had on him. I think the concerns about him are valid. It's not necessarily being negative. It's just having concerns about the player, and hopefully he goes out there and proves, those concerns he can mitigate those concerns and go out there and, be the franchise quarterback that the Broncos need.
I think the big thing was going to the evaluation of him. The analytics outside of the quick and easy throws. Chad Jensen has a really good article up on Mile High Huddle kind of talking about it. When the Broncos broke him down analytically, he was first in forgive me because I'm probably going to get some of this wrong. I can't find the article, but he was first in 2-minute drills needing points, 2-minute drill situations at the end of half, fourth quarter drives needing points, fourth quarter drives inside of 2 minutes needing points, and he was second behind Spencer Rattler in terms of red zone efficiency. Those are all situations where you have to be smart with the football. You have to make concise decisions, get rid of the football, and put your team in a situation to obviously be successful, but go get points when you absolutely need to have them. That is something to me that really sticks out with his game, because you did see that on tape when it came to those critical drives where you absolutely have to have it. Nix was a standout player in this class. So he also processes the game. We talked about it a little bit earlier. He processes the game so well. He gets rid of the ball so quickly. He knows how to operate the offense. If he can do that at the NFL level, I think that he's going to be a fine quarterback, probably a mid-level 12 to 15 area starter, a guy you can win some football games with. But the tools that he has outside of that, the arm strength, and I'm not talking about throwing the ball deep. Every one of these guys can throw the ball 60 yards in the air. It's not hard to do. Hell, I threw a ball 45 yards in the air the other day playing catch with my son. I'm not an NFL quarterback, so I'm going to thump my chest a little bit. Whatever. We're talking about driving throws. You need a 3rd and 12 dig route on the numbers in tight coverage. Bo Nix doesn't have that velocity. That's the issue. He's got great athleticism. He can work with his legs, but is he really a creator after the play breaks down? Probably not. It's not that we hate Bo Nix and not being negative. We just have to be objective with our opinions here because that's what we do on Dove Valley Deep Divers. So, Sean, hopefully we did a good job answering your question and at least providing a little bit more insight into our opinions on Bo Nix. And thank you for joining us. We definitely appreciate it. Eric, anything else you want to add on that?
Or you want no, but I did have this question here from String Guy asking me about John Paddock. No, my thoughts haven't changed. He might make a practice squad and might hang around on practice squads for a couple of years, but that's about it. I don't see enough there. Having an NFL arm, despite how much we talk about, how much I talk about having an NFL arm, you need a lot more than that. And I just don't see it with John Paddock.
Yeah. I didn't get to watch John Paddock, so I'm not going to comment on him. Back to the draft evaluations. Let's go to the AFC North because AFC opponents are obviously more important than NFC opponents, especially because guess what? Playoff seeding is a thing, and you have to have wins against the conference to help boost your. Go ahead. If you got something, go ahead.
Todd came in just asking about this. Who cares if he has a lot of velocity? What matters is being on time with throws. The NFL cares about velocity because those throws that being on time are often through tight windows, and you need the velocity to put it into those tight windows. Mm-hmm. That's why velocity matters. It helps you make those timing throws through the tight windows when that window is open, instead of kind of like not putting this enough on it to where the window closes and an interception happens.
Right.
Velocity is extremely important.
I'm going to give a visual representation here. Okay. Everybody can see that they heard I ripped a sheet of paper out of my notebook for everybody listening after the fact. That is a tight window in the NFL. If you need to absolutely drive a throw and you have a sheet of paper for an open area to get the ball into, you better be able to fire the fastball at 95. Like you better be able to rock and fire one because that's the opening you have. In college, yeah, you can throw with timing and anticipation and understand how to get rid of the football. But in college, that window is the size of a 55-gallon trash can. You've got about a couple of yards worth of room to fit that football into. A sheet of paper is 8 by 11 inches. Like there's not a whole lot of time where even 2 miles an hour off your fastball can turn that into an incompletion. It can turn it into a completion for no gain, or it can turn into a completion plus a broken tackle and yards after the catch. Like that's the minute windows. We're talking snap your fingers quick stuff here. Very tight windows, very fast players eliminate those tight windows. It's Scott comes in here. Timing equals distance plus velocity. So velocity affects the timing. Absolutely. If you can't get the ball out and get it onto your mark as fast as it can possibly get there, you're going to have issues with your timing. It's a correlation thing. You got to open up the. Todd, I'm not coming at you. I just want to open up the thinking a little bit here because the difference between Nix's velocity and Milton's was 3 miles per hour. Okay, and that's
a huge
fine.
difference.
That's a massive difference. 3 miles an hour, 98 to the plate. Let's go to baseball really fast. Okay, 98 miles an hour to the plate versus 95. You add like an extra tenth of a second. Well, it's probably not that much. It's like an extra 200ths of a second, or 300ths of a second, something like that. It's a ridiculous amount of time to be able to react to that specific pitch. Now go 101 to 98. That is like exponentially more difficult to handle as a baseball player standing at the plate. 101 to 98 is ridiculous. 98 to 95 is even more ridiculous. Like there's a massive difference there. Let's get back to go ahead, Eric.
Scott coming in with this saying arm strength isn't about overall velocity. It's about getting velocity when you can't set your feet and sling it. There is so much that goes into arm strength, and it is always just brought down to how far can you throw it. And that's just simply not the case. It is a matter of the velocity. It's a matter of, being able to throw it off platform, being able to throw it off your back foot and still get it to your receiver in time through a tight window. There's so much that goes into it. And one of the biggest tests of actual pure arm strength is a 20 yard out to the opposite side. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things. And Todd and Nick's getting the ball out faster than the quarterback in the draft. That is a good thing for his processor. but it won't always make up for a lack of velocity because, as Lance was talking about, the throwing windows in the NFL shrink significantly to the NFL. Good thing for Bo Nix is that he has Sean Payton, who really tries extremely hard to come up with plans and route combinations to get these big throwing windows open to where the arm strength, the velocity on these throws, the windows are wider and all these things for it to kind of help cover for that issue. It was a big thing with Teddy Bridgewater that he did as to why Teddy Bridgewater had some solid success there in New Orleans, is he just had those route combinations to get him an open window to where the lack of arm strength wasn't a huge negative impact.
Right.
But there's a lot that goes into it. And Zach Powers, no one has seen Nix in an NFL game yet, so no one knows if he has the arm yet. All speculation and hoping and guessing. You're right. We haven't seen him in a game yet. No one knows for sure if he has an arm. But there's a lot of people that are doing some educated guessing about if he does or doesn't. And even I can't remember what game or when it was exactly, but Sean Payton actually talked about it as well, how he's got a good enough arm, which he does. He has a good enough arm. There are some things you can't ask him to do consistently, but you can still make him work with it. If he can improve that footwork, then especially help drive, again bringing up what Luke brought in, midfoot force, working on the footwork, specifically the feet placement, generating power from his midsection of his foot and driving it, that can help him in the NFL. So there's a lot that goes into it, and hopefully that he can improve on that, and or it just doesn't become that big of an issue because the Broncos and Sean Payton managed to work around it.
I think my last thing here on Bo Nix, and this is a speculation thing, especially going to what the Oregon offense was and getting the ball out quick. They created a lot of open throwing windows for Bo Nix. So why would you need to throw the ball as hard as you possibly can to get it to your receiver when there's not a wide open, there's not a defender within your receiver within 5 yards? Just put the ball on him. It doesn't need to be a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. We never really saw him have to do that, quite honestly. Like that, it's a question for sure. Does he have that arm strength? We don't know, because you didn't need to see him force those tight window throws at Oregon because everyone was so wide open.
And my Bridgewater comment wasn't trying to say that Bridgewater has a stronger arm than Nix. Nix has a stronger arm than Bridgewater.
Absolutely. There's no question.
I was just giving an example of what Sean Payton did to make up for a quarterback who didn't have, an ideal NFL arm.
Yep.
And then you saw something that was completely different with early Drew Brees. But later Drew Brees, we saw him do the same kind of thing when the arm talent started to drop off a little bit. And Jameis Winston, he didn't have to do that as much. And we saw him adapt his passing concepts a little bit for that as well.
Yeah.
And then String Guy, I don't agree with Erick's take on Paddock. I think he has a chance to be a quarterback too in the NFL. Maybe he does. I don't see it. Odds are against him. Not many undrafted quarterbacks stick around for very long.
But and keep coming at us with your guys' opinions. Just come at it with good analysis. We want to talk football with you guys. If you have a differing opinion than us, by all means, bring it to us. We'll debate it with you. I'd love to talk with you guys in person so we could actually do that. But we're not going to shy away and don't think we're punching down on you guys because we run the show or anything like that. Like, we want to have fun with you guys and talk some good football. So let's move this conversation forward. We're running a little bit out of time. What do you got?
Let's shift to it because we had a couple people asking about undrafted free agents.
So do we have an actual list yet? Because I haven't.
No, we don't have it. We don't have an official list yet, but we do have some unofficial ones. I know that they signed or are supposedly signing a guy who will tie for the second smallest player ever in the NFL, or tied for the smallest player ever in the NFL. I can't remember exactly which. But they do. The big conversation that I saw in the chat was about the two guys who I like the best out of this group. Blake Watson, the running back out of Memphis, who I firmly would have been all about drafting in the 5th or 6th round. I liked him a lot. And Lavelle Bailey, a linebacker out of Fresno State, who is versatile. He can cover pretty well. He's got a good IQ. The big hiccup on him is that he's probably not the most athletic guy in the world, but he definitely adds another element to the Broncos defense in that linebacker room that they just don't have.
He's going to be a hell of a special teams player because you want to talk about heat-seeking missile. This dude chases the football like you can't see. He's undersized for sure, but athletic as all hell. He is fluid in his lower half. I think the big problem was heat-seeking missile is fine. He also missed too many tackles. Like he'll get after running backs out in open space and he'll chase down receivers because he has the athleticism to do it. But I think the size limitations were really the big reason why he didn't go drafted because there was a couple of guys that I think he compared favorably to even with the size, but athletically, Trevin Wallace. I don't know why he was drafted that high. Somehow, like something tells
because he's
me
really good.
I didn't like him, dude. I did not
He's
like
really
Trevin
good.
Wallace. I didn't like him. I thought that his instincts were so lacking and he was always out of position. He relied on that athleticism too much, man. Lavelle Bailey was at least that good in terms of understanding where to go, and he was athletic enough to compare with him. I didn't like Trevin Wallace at all.
But Bailey, he's listed at 6'2", which is, right about that modern mold of that length, 225 pounds. And he does play about 225, 230. So he's
Mhm,
on the lighter side, but that's the way a lot of NFL teams are going.
mhm.
But yeah, he just does a lot. He can get caught on blocks when working downhill, but he also can,
Yep.
sort through the trash enough to get to it. And yeah, I mean, I really like Lavelle Bailey, as I was saying. Omar Brown, he's another one that coming out of the Shrine Bowl. A lot of people thought he was going to get drafted. He had a huge week at the Shrine Bowl and was really impressive there, which is nice. The Dylan Leonard, the tight end out of Georgia Tech, he spent almost half of his time on the offense playing at Georgia Tech as a blocker, which, yeah, Georgia Tech, you know that your tight ends are going to be blocking.
Mhm.
Um, Frank Crum is fine. I'm trying to think if there was another one that really stood out. Um, no, that's about it. Who stands out for me from the list as guys that I think have the better shots of making the Broncos roster, but it's still very early.
So we have Doug Tessier coming in here talking about how about Crum does he stand a chance? I actually do think that he does stand a chance because he's got enough athleticism to his tape that he can develop that way. You're talking 6'8", 340 pounds ish, something like that. Good length. He's just technically raw and lacks a lot of power. And he has a high pad level. I mean, when you're 6'8", you already have a high pad level, so you have to work about like bending your knees, bending your hips, playing with the proper pad level, getting down and driving as a blocker. His first step is backwards and his chest pops straight up into the air. He doesn't play with adequate bend. That's a coachable technique for somebody like a guy with his athleticism. He moves really well. He's got quick feet. He's got good length. He's got enough hand strength that he can work with it. But again, so technically raw, and he just that pad level was a big issue for me watching his tape. And I'm a Wyoming guy. I live in Wyoming. Like I'm a huge Wyoming Cowboys fan. I didn't think that he was a draftable prospect, but if you're looking for a developmental guy with tools and upside, this is a guy I do think he can stand around, stick around for the long haul. He's going to be a developmental player for sure. I don't know that he makes the roster over Alex Palczewski, but I do think he's going to stick on the practice squad this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough this early out trying to make
Yeah. Yeah.
roster projections. Even though I'm going to be working on one for an article next week. Um, the issue is the Broncos. I mean, he's going to have to show a lot. There's a good chance he can stick on the practice squad. I think the odds of him making the roster are less than 5%.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, you have Mike McGlinchey and Garrett Bowles. They're obviously making it. Alex Palczewski, I think, is going to make it. And then you have Matt Pert, who they brought in, who they really liked and want to work with developing. And then DeMontre Jacobs, who they really liked and
Oh,
actually
I
really
love
liked developing last year. And then you have Frank Crum.
Mhm.
So, and it was funny too, because as you're talking about all the things that he brings and all the things that he has, you mentioned that he lacks power and he lacks proper bend, which are the two biggest things that have to be down to be effective in Sean Payton's offensive scheme.
Yeah. Yeah, the bend, him playing with bad pad level, and then he'll overset. He has a tendency to overset, and I think it's a big reason for that is his size and his pad level. He gets too far back, and he allows open lanes across his face. and he has enough length and power to kind of jab those guys off, but he doesn't really have that lateral agility enough to wall a guy that wants to cross his face. He doesn't really lean into those blocks and start to drive back in. Again, pad level power and consistency, stuff like that. And as much as everyone thinks about pad level and power consistencies with run blocking, they're almost more important with pass protection, because you have to have that balance. You have to play with a good base, a good balance, the ability to move laterally, and then still be able to recover with power in your upper half and your lower half. To like, I don't know, man. We could go round and round on these technical proficiencies that these players lack at times. And Crum, while I like the player, I think that there's so much technical refinement that he has to have to become an NFL player and not just a quality pass protector at the Mountain West Conference.
Yeah. Michael coming in and saying, great show tonight, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers. And yeah, that's going to be pretty much it for us. I mean, unless there's any, dying questions here. Obviously we'll be back next week, and not sure what we're going to be doing next week, but I think we'll probably have a better chance of, we'll probably have an official list of who the Broncos have signed as undrafted free agents, that we can really dig into that and actually start going into who we think has a better chance of making the Broncos roster compared to others. But yeah, unless there's any last minute questions in there or in the chat that you guys want answered, that's probably going to be wrapping it up for us. And I did find the very small guy. They signed BJ West from Alabama State, 5'8", 142 pounds, and over 6 years at Alabama State, he has -5 yards.
Why? What are we doing here? How did he make an NFL?
From what I understand, they're looking at bringing him in and seeing what he can do with the new kickoff rules.
That's fair.
Super small guy, thinking that you can get him lost behind all that. So, and Scott said he had to be a return guy. Yeah, I'm assuming so. I just don't have the return stats. I just, had the offense stats.
I'm curious to see if the Broncos are going to use Estime on kickoff return. I don't think he has the explosive long speed to be able to do that, but at the same time, the vision, the power that he runs with, he's going to pick up 15 to 20 yards of return.
And Todd did ask me this question, and I saw it earlier. It was asking about what I thought of Sean Payton's, process when evaluating quarterbacks. If you are going to take a quarterback at 12, that just about every serious draft analyst, NFL analyst thinks is a reach at 12. If you're going to take him at 12, you better have done a lot of work on him. Mm-hmm. And I'll give Sean Payton credit. He did a lot of work on all these quarterbacks. The analytic department, they did a lot of work on, taking out screenplays, taking out all these short throws, all these easy throws, these high completion throws. Just all these these throws that you just don't see a whole lot of in the NFL, at least not as frequently as you do at Oregon. So hat tip to them, hat tip to Sean Payton, hat tip to everybody for all the work that they've done. Now it has shifted focus. Hopefully he goes on and does what he needs to do to be a good NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Eric, do you have anything else? I want to get to something really fast if we got an opportunity. Is there anything else you want to grab?
1 second. I'm trying to see something as somebody mentioned it in the chat. Michael Creel is saying that the Broncos released BJ West. I haven't seen any of that yet. I may have missed it. And then John M., the Colorado School of Mines for a tryout. This is actually, I think, pretty funny.
Yeah, John McCoda.
Every year, NFL Network they do their stump the truck thing, where they name players to try and see if they actually have video on it. This is one of the players that actually managed to stump the truck that they didn't have video evidence of. That's something that's pretty funny. Taylor Brooks, can we sweep the Chiefs? It's always possible.
It is.
I don't think it's likely, but it's possible.
Yeah. Makota is a player that was like super fun, apparently like wildly creative, undersized for the quarterback position, but wildly creative, and would be fun for a rookie tryout. Why the hell not? Let's see what this guy has, and maybe he can stick around in the practice squad. But I think that's pretty much going to do it, guys. Before we get out of here, though, I want to address something that arose over the weekend, coming after the live draft shows. I saw some things, and it was not necessarily bothered Eric. I'm gonna let him speak on it if he wants to. But for me, like Eric's one of my best friends on the planet, guys, and there were people like attacking him, saying he doesn't respect me. That's simply not the case. If I felt that Eric didn't respect me, I wouldn't do this show with him. You guys got to remember, we have a highly successful podcast, multi years going. We broke a draft record this last year, 750 viewers while we were live just during the third day of the draft. And like that's double what we usually do. If Eric ever showed any disrespect to me or anybody else here at Mile High Huddle, I wouldn't be here anymore. I ask him to be hard on me because that helps me be a better analyst. So while I appreciate you guys coming to my defense, you guys don't need to. It's not needed. It's not warranted. So back off just a little bit because you're also attacking me. And I don't appreciate that. Last weekend was a blast because you guys got to see us kind of open up and have some fun and just joke with each other like we do every single day. And to have that come up it's not fair to either of us. So please just stop with that. Because again, if I felt like Eric disrespected me or didn't value my opinions, we wouldn't be here today. Like, plain and simple. Like, Eric can stand up for himself and I'll let him do that if he wants to. But for me, please just stop that because it's not fair to me either. So, with that, guys, I'm going to close the show out. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos.